The morning sun shone through the tall windows of the United Earth Council building in Geneva. President Chen Liu sat at her desk, looking at reports from the outer colonies. Everything seemed normal. The mining ships were doing well near Proxima. Centauri, the farming domes on Wolf 359, had just sent their latest harvest to Earth. Life was good for humanity among the stars. Then her assistant rushed into the office. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he held a datapad. "Madam President," he said, trying to catch his breath. "We have visitors. They're not human." Chen Liu looked up from her papers. In her 5 years as president, she had dealt with many strange things. But aliens? That was new. "Where are they?" she asked, standing up slowly. "Above Earth, 12 ships. They're huge, Madam President. Each one is bigger than our largest space station." Chen Liu walked to the window and looked up at the blue sky. She could not see the alien ships, but she knew they were there, waiting. "What do they want?" she asked. "They want to talk. They sent a message. They're sending someone down to meet with you." 2 hours later, Chen Liu stood in the main meeting room of the council building. Around the table sat the leaders of Earth's major nations, the heads of the space colonies, and Admiral Sarah Voss, the commander of Earth's defense fleet. Everyone was quiet. Everyone was nervous. The doors opened with a soft hiss. What walked? Through them was unlike anything any human had ever seen. The creature was tall, maybe 8 feet high. Its skin was dark blue and seemed to shine under the lights. It had 4 arms and moved with grace that seemed almost like dancing. Its eyes were large and silver, and when it looked at the humans, there was something cold in that gaze. Something that said it thought humans were less than it was. "I am High Curator Zethkar of the Galactic Hegemony," the creature said. Its voice came from a small device on its chest that turned its words into English. "I speak for 12 great species that rule this part of the galaxy." Chen Liu stepped forward. She had been chosen to speak for all of humanity in this moment. The weight of 7 billion lives rested on her shoulders. "Welcome to Earth," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am President Chen Liu. We are honored to meet other intelligent life." Zethkar made a sound that might have been laughter, but there was no humor in it. "Honor," it repeated. "An interesting word from a species like yours. What do you mean?" Chen Liu asked. Zethkar walked around the table, looking at each human leader. Its silver eyes seemed to judge them and find them wanting. "Your species has been watched, President Liu. For 50 years, we have seen you spread out from this small world. We have seen you build colonies. We have seen you fight wars among yourselves. We have seen what you truly are." Admiral Voss leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman, but there was steel in her voice when she spoke. "And what do you think we are?" Zethkar stopped walking and stared at her. "You are chaos," it said. "You are violence. You are a disease that spreads from world to world, bringing war and death wherever you go. The galaxy was peaceful before your kind reached the stars." The room was silent. Chen Liu felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. This was too important for emotions. "We have had our wars," she admitted, "but we have also brought peace. We have built homes among the stars. We have created beauty and art and music. We are more than just violence." Zethkar waved one of its 4 hands as if brushing away her words. "Pretty lies," it said. "We know what you are, because we have seen what you do. Your colonies grow larger every year. Your ships go farther into space every month. You take resources that do not belong to you. You claim worlds that should remain empty. You are a threat to the order we have built." "The galaxy is big enough for all of us," said President Okafor of the African Federation. Surely there is room for humans and your people to live in peace. Peace? Zethkar's voice became sharp. There can be no peace while your kind spreads like a plague. That is why I am here. That is why the hegemony has sent me to give you a choice. Chun Liu felt her heart start to beat faster. This was not going to be good news. What choice? She asked. Zethkar reached into a pouch on its side and pulled out a small crystal device. It placed the device on the table, and suddenly the air above it filled with images. Star maps. Pictures of human colonies. Numbers and data that scrolled too fast to read. You have 6 of your months, Zethkar said. In that time, you will stop all expansion beyond this solar system. You will place your colonies under hegemony oversight. You will accept our guidance in all matters of space travel and resource gathering. You will become what you should have been from the beginning, a member species under our protection. And if we refuse? Admiral Voss asked. Her voice was quiet, but there was danger in it. Zethkar's silver eyes focused on her. Then you will face corrective measures, it said. Your colonies will be removed. Your ships will be destroyed. Your species will learn to stay where it belongs. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Shan Liu looked around the table at the other leaders. She saw anger in some faces, fear in others. She saw Admiral Voss writing something on a datapad, her fingers moving quickly. You're talking about war, Shen Liu said. We are talking about order, Zethkar replied. War is what happens when lesser species refuse to accept their place in the galaxy. The choice is yours, President Liu. Submit to the hegemony's wisdom, or face the consequences of your pride. Chun Liu stood up slowly. She was not a tall woman, but in that moment she seemed to fill the room. We need time to discuss this, she said. This is not a decision one person can make alone. You have 6 months, Zethkar said. Use them wisely. The hegemony has been patient with your kind for too long. Our patience has limits. The alien turned and walked toward the door. As it reached the exit, it stopped and looked back at the human leaders. Do not mistake our offer for weakness, it said. 12 species have tried to resist the hegemony in the past. 12 species learned the price of defiance. Do not let humanity become the 13th. Then it was gone, leaving only the soft hiss of closing doors and the smell of something like ozone in the air. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Admiral Voss spoke. Well, she said, her voice calm and steady. I guess we know where we stand? Chun Liu sat down heavily in her chair. 6 months to decide the fate of humanity. 6 months to choose between freedom and survival. She looked around at the faces of Earth's leaders and saw her own thoughts reflected in their eyes. They would not submit. They could not submit. Whatever the cost, humanity would find another way. The war had not started yet, but in that quiet room, surrounded by the weight of an impossible choice, Chen Liu knew it was coming. The aliens had given them 6 months to surrender. Humanity would use those 6 months to prepare for war. 6 months passed like a breath of wind. Admiral Sarah Voss stood on the bridge of the warship Defiance, watching the stars through the main window. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew what was coming. The hegemony had not waited for humanity's answer. 3 days ago, their ships had appeared at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. Long-range sensors showed 300 alien vessels, arranged in perfect formation. They were beautiful in a deadly way, like silver sharks swimming through the darkness of space. Admiral, called Lieutenant Kim from the communications station. Message from Earth Command. Put it through, Voss said. President Chen Liu's face appeared on the main screen. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. The weight of leading. Humanity through its darkest hour had aged her quickly. Admiral, the president said. "A hegemony fleet has begun moving toward our colonies. Intelligence says they'll reach Proxima Centauri in 8 hours. Wolf 359 will be next." Voss nodded. They had known this day would come. Humanity's answer to the hegemony's ultimatum had been delivered 2 weeks ago. President Liu had stood before the alien ambassador with quiet dignity and spoken words that would be remembered forever. "We choose neither submission nor destruction. We choose to forge our own path among the stars." The aliens' response had been swift. The hegemony fleets were already moving before Liu finished speaking. "What are your orders, Madam President?" Voss asked. "Protect our people, Admiral. Show them what humanity is capable of when we fight for our freedom." The screen went dark. Voss turned to her tactical officer, a young man named Martinez, who had trained for this moment his entire adult life. "Status report," she ordered. "All ships are in position, Admiral. 47 vessels spread across 3 defensive lines." "The aliens don't know we're here." Voss smiled grimly. "The hegemony thought humans were primitive. They expected Earth's defense fleet to meet them head-on in traditional battle formation. They had no idea that human military doctrine had evolved far beyond their understanding." "Good," she said. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to hurt them so badly, they'll think twice about attacking our colonies." 8 hours later, the hegemony fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. The alien ships moved with mechanical precision toward the human mining stations orbiting the red dwarf star. High, Curator Zethkar stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The humans had not even tried to defend their colonies. Their ships were nowhere to be seen. "Commander Velthar," he called to his tactical officer, "begin the cleansing. Target the mining platforms first, then the habitation modules." "Yes, High Curator," the commander replied. "Estimated time to complete pacification, 47 minutes. Zethkar nodded. The humans would learn quickly that resistance was futile. After this demonstration, Earth would beg for the mercy of the hegemony. The alien fleet spread out in a wide formation, preparing to systematically destroy every human structure in the system. Energy weapons powered up, missile tubes loaded, the hegemony war machine prepared to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. That was when Admiral Voss struck. The human ships had been hiding in the asteroid belt, their stealth systems masking their presence from alien sensors. They came from all directions at once, moving fast and hitting hard. The Defiance led the charge, its guns blazing as it tore through the alien formation. Behind it came 46 other ships, each one piloted by humans who knew they were fighting for the survival of their species. The hegemony ships tried to respond, but they had been caught completely off guard. Their formation broke apart as human vessels swarmed through their ranks like angry wasps. Captain Marcus Torres, commanding the destroyer Indomitable, watched his target grow larger on the main screen. The alien heavy cruiser was 3 times the size of his ship, but Torres didn't care. He had lost his brother in the farming colonies of Wolf 359. This was personal. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's communication system. "Prepare for ramming speed." His crew didn't hesitate. They had trained for this. They knew the price of freedom. The Indomitable accelerated directly toward the alien cruiser. Its engines pushed far beyond safe limits. The alien ship tried to turn away, but it was too slow. Too big, too confident in its own superiority. Torres' ship struck the alien vessel right at its command section. The explosion could be seen from light years away. All across the battle zone, similar scenes played out. Human ships used tactics the hegemony had never seen before. They rammed enemy vessels. They coordinated swarm attacks that overwhelmed alien Defenses. They fought with a fury that shocked the supposedly superior alien forces. Lieutenant Sarah Chun, piloting a fighter craft, dove between two alien destroyers, her ship's weapons cutting deep into their hulls. Behind her, 5 more human fighters followed her through the gap, their missiles finding weak spots in the alien armor. "This is Fighter Squadron 7, she called over the radio. "We're seeing heavy damage to the enemy formation." They're not used to this kind of fighting. She was right. The hegemony fought wars the way they had, for thousands of years. Formal, controlled, civilized. They had rules about how battles should be conducted. Humans had no such rules when their survival was at stake. Commander Velther stared at his tactical display in growing horror. His beautiful formation was falling apart. Human ships were everywhere, striking from unexpected angles, using tactics that made no sense according to proper military doctrine. "High Curator," he called to Zethkar. "Request permission to withdraw. We're taking heavy casualties." "Zethkar?" Silver eyes blazed with fury. "Withdraw? From primitives who barely know how to fly between stars? Never. Order all ships to engage. Show these creatures what real power looks like." But the hegemony's superior firepower meant nothing when they couldn't hit their targets. The human ships were too fast, too unpredictable. They fought like wild animals, with no regard for their own safety. Admiral Voss watched the battle from the bridge of the Defiance. Her ship had taken heavy damage, but her crew kept fighting. Around her, other human vessels were falling to alien fire, but they were taking enemy ships with them. "Admiral," called her communications officer. "Signal from Captain Williams on. The Courage. His ship is crippled, but he's on a collision course with the alien flagship." Voss nodded grimly. Captain Williams had 3 children. Back on Earth, he was sacrificing himself to protect them and every other human child in the galaxy. Courage slammed into the Eternal Dominion's engine section. The alien flagship's faster-than-light drive exploded in a burst of energy that lit up the entire system. Zethkar was thrown to the deck of his bridge as his ship shook violently. Emergency lights flashed red. Damage reports flooded in from all sections. "Engineering reports total failure of the primary drive," Commander Velther said, his voice shaking. "We're dead in space, High Curator." Around them, the battle was turning into a massacre. Not of humans, as Zethkar had expected, but of his own forces. Ship after ship fell to the swarming human attackers. "Order the retreat," he said quietly. "High Curator." "I said order the retreat," Zethkar roared. "Get our ships out of here before these madmen destroy us all." The surviving hegemony ships gathered what remained of their fleet and jumped to faster-than-light speed. They left behind 73 destroyed vessels and the burning wreck of their flagship. Admiral Voss stood amid the wreckage of the battle, looking at the cost of their victory. 22 human ships had been destroyed. Over 3,000 brave men and women had died to protect their colonies, but they had won. The mighty hegemony fleet had been defeated by a handful of human vessels. "Communications," she called. "Get me a channel to the hegemony survivors." A moment later, Zethkar's face appeared on her screen. The alien looked shaken, its silver eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "This is Admiral Sarah Voss of the United Earth Defense Fleet," she said, her voice cold as space itself. "You wanted to see what monsters look like. You're looking at one. Next time you come for our people, remember what happened here today." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Set course for Wolf 359, she ordered. "If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." In the depths of space, the alien fleet fled toward their home worlds, carrying news that would shake the hegemony to its core. The humans were not the primitive savages they had expected. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that would do anything to protect their own. The war had begun, and humanity had drawn first. Blood. Dr. Elena Vasquez had not slept in 3 days. She stood in her laboratory, deep beneath the Swiss mountains, staring at equations that covered every wall. Numbers and symbols that could change the course of the war filled her vision. Around her, dozens of other scientists worked at computer terminals, their faces lit by the glow of data screens. It had been 8 months since the battle at Proxima Centauri. 8 months since humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not go quietly. Into the dark. The hegemony had retreated, but everyone knew they would be back. And when they came, they would bring everything they had. Earth had become a different world in those 8 months. The green parks and quiet streets were gone, replaced by factories and military bases. Every resource the planet had was being turned into weapons and ships. Children as young as 16 were training to be soldiers. Grandparents were working in ammunition plants. Humanity had become a species at war. Dr. Vasquez called her assistant, a young man named David Park. "The president is here to see you." Elena looked up from her work. President Shun Liu stood in the doorway of the lab, flanked by 2 security guards. The president looked tired, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Madam President," Elena said, wiping her hands on her lab coat, "I wasn't expecting you." "I needed to see our progress for myself," Liu replied, walking into the lab. "The intelligence reports from our spies in hegemony space are not encouraging. They're building the largest fleet in galactic history. Over 2,000 ships." Elena nodded grimly. "I know. That's why we're working around the clock. We can't match their numbers, but we might be able to match their firepower." She led the president to a large table where a strange device sat under protective covering. It was about the size of a briefcase, made of materials that seemed to bend. Light around them. "What am I looking at?" Liu asked. "The future of human warfare," Elena replied, pulling away the covering. "We call it a quantum disruption projector. It creates a field that destabilizes the molecular bonds in whatever it hits. Alien shields, armor, hull plating, none of it matters. This weapon affects matter at the atomic level." Liu leaned closer to examine the device. "How does it work?" "The aliens have been using the same shield technology for thousands of years," Elena explained. "It's very advanced, but it's also predictable. Our weapon creates quantum fluctuations that their shields can't adapt to. It's like using a key they don't know exists." "And you're sure it works?" Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. "We tested it yesterday on a piece of alien hull we recovered from the Proxima battle. The metal just fell apart, turned to dust in seconds." In another part of the underground facility, engineer Liu Wei was solving a different problem. He stood in a massive chamber where the skeleton of a new type of warship was taking shape. The vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever built before. "The traditional approach isn't working," he explained to Admiral Voss, who had come to inspect the project. "We can't build ships fast enough to match hegemony numbers. So we're building ships that can repair themselves." Voss walked around the ship's frame, studying the strange technology embedded in its structure. "Nanotechnology?" "Advanced nanotechnology," Liu Wei confirmed. "Millions of microscopic robots built into every part of the ship. When the hull takes damage, the nanobots immediately begin repairs. When systems fail, they rebuild them. This ship will be able to fight in battles that would destroy a normal vessel." "How long until it's ready?" 2 months for the first prototype, 6 months for full production." Liu Wei paused, looking at the unfinished ship. "Admiral, this technology could change everything. Not just for the war, but for humanity's future among the stars." Above ground, in the former United Nations building in New York, the leaders of humanity's military forces gathered for their daily briefing. Admiral Voss sat at the head of the table, studying reports from across human space. "Status report," she said. General Harrison, commander of ground forces, spoke first. "All colonies have been fortified. We've got defensive positions on every world, and civilian populations have been evacuated to secure locations. If the hegemony wants our colonies, they'll have to fight for every inch." Colonel Maria Santos, head of intelligence, was next. "Our spies report that the hegemony is having problems of their own. Several member species are questioning the war. They thought it would be over quickly, but our resistance has surprised them." "Good," Voss said. "What about their military buildup?" 2,000 ships, as the president mentioned. But there's something else. They're bringing in species we've never seen before. Warriors from the Outer Rim. They're scared of us, Admiral. Captain Jennifer Walsh, the youngest officer at the table, cleared her throat. "Ma'am, if I may, my pilots have been talking. They want to take the fight to the enemy. Sitting here waiting for them to attack feels wrong." Voss nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. "What do you suggest, Captain?" "Hit them first. Not their main fleet. We're not ready for that yet. But they have mining operations, supply, bases, worlds that support their war effort. We could hurt them where they don't expect it." Admiral Voss stood up and walked to the large star map that dominated one wall of the room. It showed the galaxy divided into territories. The red areas belonged to the hegemony. The small blue dot near the edge was human space. "Captain Walsh is right," she said. "We can't win a defensive war against 2,000 ships, but we don't have to fight defensively." She pointed to a system marked in yellow, deep in hegemony. "Space, Vega. They have a major mining operation there. Rare metals that they need for their ship production. If we could destroy it, it would slow down their military buildup," General Harrison finished. "But it's deep in enemy territory. How do we get there without being detected?" Voss smiled. "The same way we won at Proxima. We do the unexpected." 2 weeks later, a small fleet of human ships approached the Vega system. They had traveled for days through space that belonged to the enemy, using routes that normal military doctrine said were impossible. Admiral Voss commanded the mission herself from the bridge of the newly completed Aurora, the first ship to use engineer Liu Wei's nanotechnology. "Sensors show 24 alien ships guarding the mining facility," reported Lieutenant Kim. "Mostly light cruisers and patrol vessels." "Any sign they've detected us?" Voss asked. "No, ma'am. Stealth systems are holding." Voss looked at the tactical display. The alien mining operation was massive. Dozens of automated platforms pulling precious metals from asteroid fields. It was exactly the kind of target that could hurt the hegemony war effort. "All ships, this is Admiral Voss," she said into her communicator. "Remember, we're not here to fight a fair battle. We're here to destroy everything they've built and get out before they can respond. Fast and brutal." The human ships dropped their stealth systems and attacked. The alien defenders were caught completely off guard. They had been expecting pirates or raiders, not a coordinated military strike. The battle was short and vicious. Human ships swarmed through the alien formation, their new quantum disruption weapons tearing through enemy shields like they weren't there. The Aurora took heavy damage from alien plasma cannons, but its nanotechnology immediately began repairs. Hull breaches sealed themselves. Damaged systems rebuilt themselves. The ship kept fighting. Within an hour, the mining operation was destroyed. Platforms worth billions of credits were reduced to floating debris. The alien defenders were either destroyed or fleeing toward their home worlds. "Mission accomplished," Voss reported to Earth Command. "Mining facility destroyed. No human casualties." But as her fleet prepared to leave the system, something unexpected happened. A transmission came in from one of the fleeing alien ships. "Human vessels," the voice said in accented English. "This is Commander Zalkar of the Hegemony Fourth Fleet. You fight well for such a young species." Vos frowned. Aliens didn't usually want to talk after losing a battle. "What do you want, Commander?" she replied. "To give you a warning," the alien sighed. "Supreme Arbiter Colfin has declared you an existential threat to galactic civilization. He is bringing forces from the core worlds, ships you have never seen, weapons that can destroy planets. Why are you telling us this?" There was a pause before the alien answered. "Because some of us remember what it was like before the hegemony brought order to the galaxy. Some of us think the universe could use a little chaos." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Voss staring at empty space. As her fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading home to Earth, she thought about the aliens' words. The hegemony was bringing everything they had, but humanity was ready. They had new weapons, new ships, and something the aliens had never faced before: the desperate fury of a species fighting for its freedom. The real war was about to begin. 18 months had passed since the first shots were fired at Proxima Centauri. The war had changed everything and everyone. Admiral Sarah Voss stood on the bridge of the newest human warship, the Retribution, watching 6 hegemony worlds burn on her tactical display. She barely recognized herself anymore. The woman who had once been a career officer following regulations and procedures was gone. In her place stood someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans became when they were pushed too far. Now they knew. "Admiral," called Commander Peterson from the tactical station, "all strike groups report mission success. Hegemony defenses on Kethmara, Veltar, and 4 other worlds have been neutralized." Voss nodded without emotion. "Casualties?" "Surprisingly light. The new Phoenix protocols worked exactly as planned. Enemy losses are ... significant." That was one way to put it. Dr. Elena Vasquez's latest invention had changed the nature of warfare itself. When human ships were destroyed, they didn't just die quietly. They exploded with controlled antimatter detonations that took everything nearby with them. The aliens had learned to fear even winning against human forces. "Signal all ships," Voss ordered. "Prepare for extraction. We've done what we came to do." On the surface of Kethmora, Colonel James Morrison led his ground troops through the smoking ruins of what had once been the planet's capital city. His men called him Reaper now, and he had earned the nickname. Where human soldiers went, alien resistance died. Morrison's helmet display showed the mission objectives updating in real time. Government building, destroyed. Military command center, destroyed. Spaceport, destroyed. The alien defenders had fought bravely, but they had never faced anything like human infantry in close combat. "Sir," called Sergeant Williams over the radio, "we've got movement in Sector 7. Looks like civilians trying to evacuate." Morrison paused at a destroyed roadblock, studying his tactical display. "Let them go, Sergeant. We're not here to hurt civilians. We're here to break their military." That was the difference between humans and the hegemony. When the aliens had attacked human colonies, they had targeted everyone, military and civilian alike. When humans struck back, they focused on military targets. It was a distinction that was noticed throughout the galaxy. "Yes, sir," Williams replied. "Sir, if I may ask, how long do we keep this up?" Morrison looked around at the devastation they had caused. "Until they surrender, Sergeant. Until they understand that they can't win." In the depths of space, the human fleet regrouped after their successful strikes. 6 worlds attacked simultaneously. 6 military installations destroyed. The message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere, anytime, and the mighty hegemony couldn't stop them. Captain Lisa Chun, Commanding the destroyer Vengeance reviewed the battle reports with grim satisfaction. Her ship had taken heavy damage during the assault on Veltar, but the nanotechnology repairs had already restored most of her hull integrity. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." "Command." President Liu's face appeared on the main screen. She looked older than her years, aged by the weight of leading humanity through its first interstellar war. "All ships, this is Earth Command," Liu said. "Intelligence reports indicate the hegemony is preparing a massive counterattack. Supreme Arbiter Cole Thun is personally leading a fleet of over 3,000 ships toward human space. Estimated arrival, 6 days." The bridge fell silent. 3,000 ships was more than humanity had ever faced before. It was more than they had ships to fight. "However," Liu continued, "our strikes have been more successful than we hoped. Several hegemony member species are questioning their leadership. The Zephyrians have withdrawn their fleets entirely. The Korthic Collective is demanding peace negotiations. We've hurt them badly, and they know it." Admiral Voss cut into the transmission from her flagship. "What are your orders, Madam President?" "Win this war, Admiral. Whatever it takes." The transmission ended, leaving the human fleet commanders to plan for what might be the final battle of the war. But they had advantages the hegemony didn't know about. Dr. Vasquez had been busy. 3 days later, in her underground laboratory, Elena Vasquez made final adjustments to her latest creation. It was her most ambitious project yet, a weapon that could turn the enemy's greatest strength against them. "Are you sure this will work?" asked engineer Lu Wei, studying the data on his tablet. "The theory is sound," Elena replied, checking the weapon's power systems one last time. The hegemony species are mostly telepathic or empathic. They share emotions and thoughts across their fleets. It's how they coordinate so perfectly. "And your weapon?" Elena smiled grimly. "Broadcasts pure human emotion directly into their minds. Fear, rage, desperation, everything we've felt since they first threatened us. Most alien species have never experienced emotions this intense. It should overload their nervous systems." "Should?" "Will," Elena corrected. "We tested it on volunteers from the Zephyrian refugees who joined our cause. They couldn't handle even a mild dose of human combat stress. A full broadcast should disable their entire fleet." Meanwhile, on the bridge of his flagship Absolute Authority, Supreme Arbiter Colthon studied the tactical displays with growing unease. His fleet was the largest ever assembled by the hegemony. 3,000 of their finest ships, crewed by the best warriors from a dozen species. But the humans had changed the rules of warfare. They fought with a savagery that shocked even veteran military commanders. They used tactics that made no sense according to civilized combat doctrine. Worst of all, they seemed to grow stronger with each battle, learning and adapting at a pace that terrified the enemy. Supreme Arbiter called his aide, a nervous Korthic named Velfun. Long-range sensors detect the human fleet. Approximately 400 ships. Colthon's 4 eyes focused on the display. 400 ships against 3,000. It should be a massacre. But he had learned not to underestimate these primitive mammals. "Order all ships to battle formation," he commanded, "and activate the planetary bombardment systems. If we cannot control these humans, we will destroy their worlds." The 2 fleets met in the space between Earth and Mars in the shadow of the Red Planet. Admiral Voss led the human forces from the bridge of the Retribution, surrounded by every ship humanity could build or repair. "All ships, this is Admiral Voss," she broadcast to her fleet. "Today we end this war. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not be conquered." The hegemony fleet approached in perfect formation, their ships gleaming like silver needles against the black of space. They outnumbered the humans 7-1. Their weapons were more advanced. Their shields were stronger, but they had never faced what Dr. Vasquez was about to unleash. "Elena," Voss said into her communicator, "are you ready?" From her position on Earth, Dr. Vasquez sat before her most powerful creation. "Ready, Admiral." Broadcasting in 3.2.1. The weapon activated, sending a focused beam of pure human emotion toward the hegemony fleet. Fear, rage, desperation, love of family, the will to survive no matter the cost. Every feeling that drove humans to fight for their freedom was concentrated into a telepathic scream that crossed space at the speed of light. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the hegemony fleet, alien crew members collapsed at their stations, overwhelmed by emotions their minds couldn't process. The perfect formation broke apart as ships lost control, their crews too stunned to function. "Now!" Admiral Voss shouted. "All ships attack." The human fleet struck like a hammer blow, their ships swarming through the confused alien formation. The quantum disruption weapons tore through enemy shields. The Phoenix protocols turned every human loss into an enemy disaster. Within hours, the mighty hegemony fleet was in full retreat. Supreme Arbiter Kol Thun stared at his tactical display in horror. Over half his fleet was destroyed or disabled. The humans had done the impossible again. They had turned certain defeat into overwhelming victory. "Supreme Arbiter," Velthan said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Admiral Voss appeared on the main screen, her face cold as the space between stars. "This is Admiral Sarah Voss of the Human Defense Fleet," she said. "Your fleet is broken. Your worlds are defenseless. Surrender now, or we will show you what total war really means." For the first time in his long life, Colthun felt something he had never experienced before: fear of another species. The war was ending, and humanity had won. The neutral station orbiting Kepler 442 had never hosted a gathering like this before. Built by the consortium, a group of species that had stayed out of the war between humanity and the hegemony, it was supposed to be a place of peace and learning. Today, it would witness the end of the greatest conflict the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. President Shen Liu walked slowly through the station's corridors, flanked by Admiral Sarah Voss and her security detail. The president had aged dramatically during the 3 years of war. Her hair was completely gray now, and lines of stress marked her face. But her eyes were still sharp, still determined. "Madam President," Admiral Voss said quietly as they approached. "The negotiation chamber. Are you sure about the terms we're demanding?" Liu paused at the door and looked at the woman who had led humanity's military forces to victory. Voss had changed too. The career officer who had once followed regulations was gone, replaced by someone harder and more dangerous. The war had transformed them all. "Admiral," Liu said, 3 years ago, they came to Earth demanding our surrender. They threatened to destroy our colonies if we didn't submit. They forced this war on us. Now they'll live with the consequences." The doors opened with a soft hiss. The negotiation chamber was large and circular, with a table in the center surrounded by chairs designed for different alien anatomies. Floating above the table was a holographic display showing the current map of the galaxy. Humanity's small blue territory now expanded significantly, while the red areas of hegemony control had shrunk. The hegemony delegation was already seated. Supreme Arbiter Colthun looked smaller than he had 3 years ago, his 4 eyes dim with defeat. Beside him sat High Curator Zethkar, the same alien who had delivered the original ultimatum to Earth, his silver eyes avoided, looking directly at the human representatives. Between the two groups sat Ambassador Mordek of the consortium, a tall, slender being with feathers instead of skin. The consortium had agreed to oversee the peace negotiations, but everyone knew they were there, mainly to make sure the humans didn't demand the complete destruction of the hegemony. President Liu, Ambassador Mordock said in his melodious voice, Supreme Arbiter Colthon, please be seated. Let us begin the process of bringing peace back to our galaxy. Liu took her seat across from the hegemony leaders. For a moment, the chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. 3 years ago, Liu began, her voice calm and steady. High Curator Sethkar came to Earth with an ultimatum. Submit to hegemony control or face annihilation. Today, we're here because the Galactic Hegemony has requested a ceasefire. How things change. Sethkar's hands trembled slightly as he activated a small device. A holographic document appeared above the table, the proposed peace treaty. The hegemony acknowledges, he said in a voice barely above a whisper, that our initial assessment of humanity was incorrect. We are prepared to discuss terms for ending hostilities. Admiral Voss leaned forward in her chair. You're prepared to discuss terms? You started this war, and you lost it. You don't get to negotiate from a position of strength. Supreme Arbiter Colthon spoke for the first time since the humans had arrived. Admiral Voss, your reputation precedes you. They, destroyer of fleets, the architect of our defeat. His voice carried a mixture of respect and fear. What do you want from us? Liu answered before Voss could speak. Complete recognition of human sovereignty over all territory we currently control. Full membership in the galactic community as equals, not subjects. Reparations for the colonies you destroyed in your opening attack. An establishment of buffer zones where no hegemony military vessels may travel. Colthon's 4 eyes widened. Those terms are ... extensive. Those terms are generous, Voss said coldly. We could have demanded the dissolution of the hegemony. Entirely. We could have taken your core worlds. We chose not to because we're not interested in ruling other species. We just want to be left alone to build our civilization among the stars. Ambassador Mordock gestured to the holographic treaty. Perhaps we should review the specific provisions. The document outlines territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and protocols for future contact between human and hegemony space. Next 6 hours, they went through every clause of the treaty. The humans' demands were clear and non-negotiable. The hegemony would formally recognize all human colonies and territories. They would pay reparations equivalent to the cost of rebuilding the destroyed settlements. Most importantly, they would accept humanity as a sovereign power with the right to expand and explore freely. During a break in the negotiations, Sethkar approached President Liu privately. The alien looked tired and defeated, his silver eyes filled with something that might have been regret. President Liu, he said quietly, may I ask you something? What is it, High Curator? 3 years ago, when I delivered our ultimatum, you could have simply surrendered. Your species would have been preserved under our protection. Why did you choose war instead? Liu was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Because survival without freedom isn't survival at all. Because a cage is still a cage, even if it's made of gold. Because humans would rather die free than live as slaves. Sethkar nodded slowly. We underestimated more than your military capabilities. We underestimated your spirit. When the negotiations resumed, it became clear that the hegemony had no choice but to accept humanity's terms. Their military was shattered. Several member species had already withdrawn from the alliance. The remaining hegemony worlds were demanding an end to the war before humanity decided to finish what the aliens had started. The galactic hegemony, Colthon said formally, accepts the terms as presented. We recognize human sovereignty and request immediate cessation of hostilities. Liu stood up and walked to the treaty display. With her finger, She signed her name in flowing script at the bottom of the document. The holographic letters glowed briefly, then became permanent. Admiral Voss, she said. Voss stood and added her signature below the president's. Her handwriting was sharp and precise, like everything else about her. One by one, the other human representatives signed the treaty. Finally, it was the hegemony's turn. Colthoon's signature was shaky, the mark of a leader signing away the dreams of galactic domination that his people had held for millennia. Zethkar signed with steady hands, but his silver eyes were dim with defeat. "It is done," Ambassador Mordak announced. "The war between humanity and the galactic hegemony is officially ended." But President Liu wasn't finished. She stood and looked directly at Zethkar, the alien who had started it all with his arrogant ultimatum 3 years ago. "High Curator," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 years of war. 3 years of sacrifice. 3 years of human blood spilled in defense of freedom. Zethkar looked up at her, waiting. 3 years ago, you came to our world and told us we had a choice: submit or be destroyed. You said the galaxy was peaceful before humanity reached the stars. You called us a disease that spreads from world to world. The chamber was completely silent. Even Ambassador Mordak had stopped moving. You demanded war when we offered peace. Liu continued. You discovered that when humanity swears vengeance, we keep our promises. Remember this lesson well. Remember it when you look at your shattered fleets and your lost worlds. Remember it when your children ask how the mighty hegemony was brought low by a species that barely knew how to travel between stars. She leaned forward, her hands flat on the table, her eyes never leaving Zethkar's face. You wanted to see what we were capable of when pushed to our limits. Now you know. And now the galaxy knows. Humanity is not a species to be threatened, controlled, or caged. We are free, and we will remain free, no matter the cost. Zethkar's voice was barely a whisper when he replied. Yes, President Liu, we understand. Liu straightened up and turned to her delegation. Our work here is done. Admiral, signal the fleet. We're going home. As the human delegation left the chamber, the hegemony representatives remained seated in stunned silence. Outside the massive windows of the station, they could see human warships preparing for the journey back to Earth. The same ships that had brought the proud hegemony to its knees. 6 months later, President Liu stood on the observation deck of the newest human space station, watching ships come and go in Earth orbit. The war was over, but humanity had been changed forever. They were no longer the naive species that had first reached for the stars with hope and wonder. They had become something both magnificent and terrible. They had proven that when threatened, humans could fight with a fury that shook the galaxy itself. Their name was spoken with respect and fear on 1,000 worlds. Admiral Voss joined her at the window, both women watching the bustling traffic of a civilization that had survived its first test among the stars. Any regrets, Madam President? Voss asked. Liu was quiet for a long moment. We lost so many people, Sarah. So many good people who died because the hegemony thought they could force us to kneel. But we're still here, Voss pointed out. Still free. Still human. Yes, Liu agreed. Still human. And the galaxy will never forget what that means. In the depths of space, human ships patrolled the new borders of their territory. They carried the names of heroes and martyrs from the war.